Hi, my name is Amanda Swanberg. I'm an attorney in St. Paul, Minnesota, and today I'm going to talk about the difference between marital property and non-marital property. This is important when you're going through a divorce, and it's important to know the difference. It's kind of complicated, so this is kind of just an introductory overview, and you may need to talk to an attorney if you have some significant questions. First of all, what is marital property? Marital property is pretty much anything you bought during the marriage or received during the marriage. That is all something that you share together. You both have an interest in it. It doesn't matter whose name is on the title. It doesn't matter who actually went out and bought big screen TV, or if the wife was mad that you bought it, it's still half hers. So pretty much everything you bought during the marriage is marital property. So when is something that you got during the marriage not marital property? When it's non-marital. It's a very complicated area, so for the most part just go with the assumption that if you own it and you acquired it during the marriage, it's marital property. Unless one of you both has to claim that it's non-marital and you have to prove it. And not only that, but even more confusing is that it can be both marital and non-marital. And then you have a little more difficulty figuring out what portion of that asset is marital versus non-marital, and we'll cover that a little bit later. So there are 6 ways that an asset can be non-marital. The easiest one, and the one that most people can understand pretty quickly, is that if it's something you owned before you got married. The most simple would be like an actual item, a gun. Grandpa gave me his antique rifle, and I have it, and I've just kept it, and it's still mine. It didn't change. If you got Grandma's china, if you got, anything like that is an heirloom, or even if you were married just a short time, maybe all the living room furniture was yours before the marriage. The marriage only lasted a couple of years, you're still using that furniture, it's non-marital. It's also all the junk that you don't want is all non-marital. That ugly couch that's sitting in the garage. Second is a gift or inheritance that's given to one but not both spouses by a third party. And by a third party means it's not my husband gave me this sweater. I guess that's a bad example. My husband gave me this diamond necklace for my birthday. Well, it's still, that's kind of a questionable issue. So let's just focus on things that come to you from perhaps a will. Typically wills will state, to my daughter, I'm leaving this, as opposed to my daughter and son-in-law jointly. So usually that's pretty easy to determine. Another area that can cause problems is when a parent gives you a couple of money for a down payment on a house. Let's say, your parents gave you $10,000 to help you afford your first home. Now you're getting divorced, they don't like your husband so much, they're going to say, well, really that was for you, honey, and so that was really just a gift to you. It can be difficult to determine, did they mean to give it to you jointly? Did they mean to just give it to one of you? Of course, especially depending on how difficult your divorce is going, that can cause a lot of problems to try to figure out if it's only because your parents are angry that now it's only a gift to you, or if it was supposed to be to both. Again, it's kind of a complicated issue, so if you have all these issues, if it's not extremely straightforward and you don't say immediately, yes, it's now non-marital, or yes, it's marital, you probably need to talk to an attorney. Something that you buy after the valuation date is considered non-marital. Now, a valuation date is typically the date of the first court hearing. You guys can also agree to use a different date. Maybe you were living separately for a year or two, never filed any paperwork or anything, and you want to use that date from 2 years ago because you both got on and bought new things and you don't want to have to deal with separating all that again. So this might be all the new furniture you buy after you move out. Or if it's been a couple of years, or you might have bought a new car. And so that is now non-marital. And something you got in exchange for non-marital property. Now this is a really tricky area. So I'm going to give you just a really straightforward example. Rarely is it this straightforward and easy. It's usually a big mess. But let's say grandma left you something that was worth a lot of money, like this beautiful mask, and you really don't want it. And you sell that mask for $5,000, let's say. And you take the full $5,000 and you buy some gold. Well, now the gold is non-marital property, even though you bought it during the marriage. Part of why that's true is because it's another thing that you're not using. It's not cash. It's not a house that you might be improving on, or it's just kind of a solid, kind of an investment that's kind of separate and self-contained. This can go wrong in all sorts of ways. So if you are even just thinking about getting a divorce, or you're married and you know you're going to get a big inheritance, you definitely want to know what can you do and what can't you do with that non-marital property to make sure it stays non-marital. It's far too confusing and situation specific to get into on a video, but it's definitely something you need to know about if you do have a lot of non-marital property either coming to you, or if you already have it and you're thinking about selling it and buying something else. Property excluded by a valid prenup. I'm not even going to talk about it, because if you have a prenup, you probably had a lot of money and you're probably not looking at videos trying to figure out how to handle your divorce. So let's just move on. Any increase in value to non-marital property is considered non-marital. Of course, there are exceptions. Primarily, you have two options. If it's an increase in value due to passive appreciation, which would be interest, I guess I take that back, because interest is marital property. You would think it would be non-marital, but it isn't, which makes absolutely no sense. But let's say you had a coin collection of those gold bars, you bought them for $5,000, and now 10 years later they're worth, $8,000. Well, that's still non-marital, because it just sat there. You didn't do anything actively to try to increase the value. Because if you do anything to increase the value, it's active appreciation, and then it is marital, because if you own a home, you inherit a property, your grandma's house, and you fix it up, well, now you've put your effort into it. That was marital time and effort and energy that you invested in that property to increase the value. So now the increase in value is marital. The original value of it is still non-marital, but that increase is marital. Now, this is where it doesn't make sense that income from non-marital property is marital income, and that's because when you get the money, like for rent, let's say you own some property and you get paid rent on it, well, that is like cash coming in, it's income, and it's available to be spent on the marriage, and so it is marital income. Same with and it doesn't make any sense. So it just is. If you do have enough income from non-marital assets, then again, you probably make enough money that you really should just dump this all on an attorney, because it's a headache, because it really doesn't make sense a lot of the time. So here's an example. If you have like a 401k, and it can be both marital and non-marital. And this is again another area where you're probably going to talk to an attorney if it's a significant amount of money. So let's say Jack worked at 3M for 5 years, and he put $10,000 into his 401k. And then he got married. And over the years, he put another $40,000 into it. So his 401k, that initial $10,000, is non-marital, but the $40,000 he put in after is marital. Problem comes in because with trying to figure out how much of that, how much above 10,000, that original 10,000 investment is due to interest on that $10,000. If you, let's say it was now worth $70,000, how much of that value is due to the increase in value of 10,000, the original 10,000. It's difficult to say. I don't know, maybe you held off, maybe you put all that money in the first year after you got married, the $40,000. Maybe you only put that in the last couple of years. Who knows what that increase is due to? And on the flip side, and depressing but possible in this economy, it's not even worth $50,000 anymore, and you're not sure where, who's supposed to take the loss on that. Maybe Jack felt like that original 10,000 is still, he should get that off the top, and then the loss should be out of the 40,000. It can be complicated. Now, another issue that comes up is if you had bought a home before you got married, and then your new spouse moved in, and then you just continue to live there and pay the mortgage and all that. Now, as you can see, there's this really simple calculation. Things like quotient change in value and premarital equity, and pretty easy. I don't even need to explain this to you, right? It's just simple math. But just to be nice, I will go through a simple example where Bob bought a house for $100,000. That was the value when he got married, and he had a $50,000 mortgage on it. And now, after the marriage, in a few years, the house is worth $200,000, because this is an imaginary world where home values increase. And now it only has a $30,000 mortgage. So first you need to figure out how much has the value increased from between the date of the marriage and now this new valuation date. And because the math is all nice and easy, it's doubled. So that is your quotient change in value. Now to figure out the premarital equity, you need to take his original equity, which would be the value of the house minus what he owed, so $50,000. The appreciated non-marital equity is where you take whatever his premarital equity is and then times that quotient change in value. So since his investment doubled for the house as a whole, his premarital equity doubles. So now he has a marital equity of $100,000. I'm sorry, did I say marital? Premarital. Excuse me. So the marital equity then, you have to basically take the $200,000 that it's worth today minus Bob's non-marital equity. That leaves $100,000. They still owe $30,000 on it. So now that's $70,000 of equity, and so that $70,000 is the marital equity. So if let's say you had sold the house for $200,000 and you're going to now split up the difference, Bob gets $135,000 and Sally, his ex-wife, gets $35,000. And Bob gets $135,000 because he gets that $100,000 chunk that's his premarital, and then they each get $35,000 for the marital. So hopefully, it's relatively easy to understand when the numbers are so simple, but it can still be a little overwhelming to try to go through all that math if you're not comfortable with it. So that's all for now. It may seem kind of simple. I really just touched on the very top layer of what the difference is and what might be clues to you as to what might be marital or non-marital. There are so many areas of danger in this topic because those non-marital assets can transform into marital assets. Sometimes even if it is even if it's non-marital, even if that house was absolutely whatever his name is, Bob's, and he is absolutely entitled to $135,000 under certain circumstances, a judge could still say, I'm sorry there, Bob, but I'm going to give Sally the $100,000 of your non-marital equity, because we need to balance out some issues here within your marriage about, her earning capabilities versus yours. And so even if it's non-marital, doesn't mean it's a slam dunk. It's possible to still have that awarded to the other party. So, and because it's very fact-specific, situation-specific, don't trust that what happened with a friend or a family member or something you read online, that's how it's going to go. Family law can turn on a dime, and it doesn't always make sense. So if you have any questions and you want to make an appointment to talk to me and maybe discuss either your divorce or just how to figure out how to handle your marital or non-marital assets, or if you think it qualifies or anything, feel free to give me a call. My number is 651-470-5533. You can email me at amanda@swanberglawoffices.com or check me out online at swanberglawoffices.com. Thank you.